Okay, welcome to this is the first video in the series which I'm calling Basic Spanish Grammar. Um, this is lesson one. I'm thinking I'll probably make about 10 to 12 lessons, and they're all meant to fall within, this rough definition of what's basic Spanish grammar. Um, and yeah, so by the way, this series is going to be part of, well, maybe not part of, but this series is meant to follow another series, which I'm calling Imminent Fluency, where we're just learning a bunch of Spanish phrases. And in those videos, I will give you time to shadow. And in those videos, um, yeah, like we break down the expressions or the statements or the phrases, and sometimes even just the one word, in order to make it more in order to give you something maybe to like help you remember, right? Okay, so like a mnemonic device of sorts. Anyway, so but back to this. Let's get back to this. So basic Spanish grammar. You can see here on the screen, this is the stuff that I'm hoping to cover, or I'm going to cover. We're gonna go over some vocabulary. Maybe you'll learn like 10 to 15 words today. We're going to cover the subject pronouns, right? The subject pronouns in English are I, you, he, she, right? And we're going to cover the Spanish versions. We're going to cover the three types of verbs in Spanish, which, yeah, we'll get to. I'm not going to like explain what I'm going to explain it later anyway. We're going to cover the conjugation of those three verbs in the present tense for the active voice, meaning the subject is performing that action, not the passive voice. We're going to talk a little bit, not too much, about adverb and prepositional phrase placement within the Spanish sentence. It's kind of just like a tip, a shortcut, but it's not meant to be like exhaustive. So this is just going to help you place these kinds of expressions in the sentence. Anyway, and then we're going to use one sentence pattern to demonstrate all of this grammar, which is the subject, verb, object. And the verb will be a transitive verb, meaning it'll have a direct object. So here it'll be subject, transitive verb, direct object. And English and Spanish have this kind of construction, and they basically use them to say the same things. Although Spanish deviates from this structure once you throw in direct object pronouns. We're not going to go into that, but I'm just saying the grammars don't always match up. Spanish grammar, even though you call it the same thing, it's not the same thing, right? You can call, like, for example, you can call English, the words in English that we call adjectives, like let's take, for example, Japanese. The Japanese has adjectives too, but their adjectives do something different than our adjectives do in many cases. So it's like you can call them the same thing, but they do different things. So it doesn't really help you. It's just better to understand the grammar in the language that you're learning, in your target language, which is what we're gonna do here. And then finally, we'll how to change a positive statement, affirmative statement like I love you into I don't love you in Spanish. And you'll see that Spanish is easier than English in this regard. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so at the end, I didn't put it here. At the end, we're gonna have 15, I think, maybe 15 or 18. I think it's 15 practice sentences where you have to translate. You're gonna go from Spanish to English. That's the easiest direction. That's an easier direction than English to Spanish. But we're just starting off. This is basic one. And I mean for you fully to be able to do those translations on your own by the time we get there. And that's going to mean you're going to have to learn how to do the conjugations for the first person present. And so it sounds like a lot to ask for, but the way we're going to go over it, the way we're going to go through it, the way we're going to repeat things, the way maybe I'll give you some mnemonic devices, and give you time to shadow a little bit, not too much. This is a grammar video. Yeah, I'm thinking you guys can do it. And then you'll see, I think you'll be surprised at how much you'll be able to translate into Spanish. Okay, so let's start here. Let's see if I can put this whole chart on the screen, or do I need to shrink this? No, I think I need to shrink it, which is unfortunate. Let's go down to 100 so I can fit the whole thing on the screen. I hope that's not too small. That's what he said. Okay, here we go. So let's first make sure we're on the same page when it comes to grammatical terms. When I talk about the subject pronouns in English, these are the ones I'm referring to. I, you, he, she, we, you, they. Now the bottom one, there is no English you. There is no English equivalent there's no English polite you, right? That's just there because there is a Spanish version. So maybe I could have put that in parentheses too. But anyway, so these are the subject pronouns in English. You guys know these if you're an English speaker. Okay, the equivalent in Spanish is here, right? And again, I'm throwing in the last one on the bottom. It says usted. That is a special U. It's a different spelling than the other U's. In some languages, the polite U in the singular is actually the plural U. They use the plural U as a polite way to say you in the singular, which is kind of weird, but it's common. Okay, but so we're going to start with I. I starts with a Y and it ends with an O. It's yo, yo. A little advice on the pronunciation. The Y is not the soft Y of yellow. It's more like a little bit of a harder Y, like when you like do that fake laugh, like yuck, 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 yuck. That's the yo. It's coming from here. Yo. It's you should be able to feel it, and it's harder than the yellow. It's yuck, right? Okay, not to that extreme, but you get the idea. And then the O. All the vowels in Spanish are short and crisp. Like if you're sitting down, I recommend you sit down and do this. Sit down and like do it like a hey, like hey. You could feel like, and if you can't feel it, you can actually force it, like to tense your diaphragm or to tense your stomach. Tense your stomach and you're like, hey. And if you're sitting down, you might even like pucker your sphincter a little bit, like hey. You might feel it if you're sitting down, right? So that tension, that hey, that's the way Spanish vowels. You should practice Spanish vowels. I'm not saying you should tense yourself like that when you say them, because later when you have the muscle maybe muscle memory, or just like you develop the skills and abilities to like make the sounds, you won't need to tense so much. Like a, e, o, u. In Spanish, it comes only from the mouth. It doesn't come from the throat. It doesn't come from the stomach. But when you practice them as an English speaker, I highly recommend, because it'll cut it off. You won't be saying a or o, right? It's a, e, o, u. So use your stomach to do it. Okay, anyway, so yo, that's I. Tu, that's you. Rhymes with you. Tu, you, right? Okay. So hopefully that helped you remember. Now, I should have switched this. I want you to look at él means he and ella means she. And we put them together because they both conjugate the same way. So if you say él habla, he speaks, it's also ella habla, she speaks. But I want you to use the ella because it ends with an A. Sorry, not the Ella. I was thinking the girl's name Ella. Ella, I want you to use ella, meaning she, because it ends with an A, and that'll be the mnemonic to remember habla, because habla ends with an A. Ella habla. Yo hablo. Right? Okay. Maybe I should have said something about the infinitives here. I will in a second. Okay, so what we want to focus is on the ella. Whatever we say about the ella applies to the L, but so which is he, él. I'm like mixing my pronunciations. Okay, now let's go back up here. Hablar is the infinitive of speak. It means to speak. The AR ending is basically the to. The AR is the to. So once you take out the to, you're left with the Spanish stem or the Spanish root of hablar. In English, when you take off the to from to speak, you're left with speak, which is the simple form. It's not the present tense. It looks like the present tense. I mean, it's spelled exactly like the present tense. I speak, but this is not the present tense. This is the simple form. It's not a tense. It's a form. Just like the infinitive form is not a tense. It's a form. Okay, so hablar is an AR verb. And let's just continue. Comer is an ER verb, as you can see. Vivir is an IR verb. And those are the three kinds of verbs in Spanish. We categorize them by their infinitive endings. You have AR verbs, you have ER verbs, and you have IR verbs. In this video, we're going to focus almost exclusively, other than this screen, other than this part right here, on the AR conjugation, AR verbs. And these are for regular verbs. Irregular verbs obviously do irregular things, but for regular verbs, and Spanish is very regular. Like, it's a lot of grammar, but it's all very regular. And even the deviations from the regular, even the irregular, are pretty damn regular. Like you might have to make one alteration or maybe two alterations, and then that's it, and then you've got it. It's not like, I mean, there's one exception, like the ser verb, but we'll get to that later. Not today though. Okay, so hablar. Okay, so let's continue with the personal pronouns here. Nosotros, nosotros. Notice that otros is the ending, and the conjugation is amos, right? Otros, nosotros. Nosotros is very important. The we is very important because it's going to be like the distinguishing pronoun when you conjugate the other verbs, and we'll see that in a second. You plural. Sometimes people write you all, or if you're like Southern, maybe you might say y'all. That the you plural, but regularly you just say you. We don't really need to say you guys or you all or right. You can just say you. Okay, but it's in Spanish. In most Spanish-speaking countries, most Spanish speakers across the world say ustedes for you. In Spain, I think in Argentina, and maybe like in one or two other countries, they use vosotros. So in predominantly Spanish speakers, the predominant number of Spanish speakers use the ustedes, and so they would say ustedes hablan, you guys speak. Spain, Argentinians will say vosotros habláis, you guys speak. So if you're planning a trip to Spain, I would learn the vosotros. I'm not teaching the vosotros here, and I'm not going to keep reminding you that there's a difference and what's that difference. Like this is not, yeah. Sorry, this is the South American, Central American Spanish. Okay, so ustedes hablan, and ellos y ellas hablan. It's the same. It's the same. So you might be thinking, oh, what if I say hablan? How are they going to know if I mean you guys speak or they speak? Because Spanish generally doesn't include the subject pronouns. This is why I have them in parentheses. It's not that we don't use them, we do, but when we use them, it's for specific a specific purpose, like to be emphatic. Like, yeah, I speak Spanish. Like, yo hablo español. I speak Spanish. Or, oh, as for me, you know, they speak English, but pero yo hablo, but I speak Spanish, right? So to make comparisons or to be emphatic, that's the most common usage of actually the subject pronoun. Otherwise, just to say I speak Spanish, you don't say yo hablo español. You would just say hablo español, right? So in most cases, the subject pronouns don't appear are not used. We don't say them. We don't, right? We don't even write them, really. Well, maybe to be more formal, but we're just talking about speaking. We don't say them. And the reason why, as you can probably already figure out, is because the endings are going to tell you what the subject pronoun is, right? If the verb is hablo conjugated at the end with a o, well then you know it has to go with yo. So you know hablo means I speak. And there's no vagueness, right? There's no vagueness, there's no ambiguity here. Hablas español must mean you speak. Again, no vagueness, no ambiguity. Habla, there is an ambiguity or there is a vagueness because usted habla it could be usted habla. The subject could be usted, which is you polite, or it could be él habla or ella habla. And in those cases, when context doesn't when context doesn't make it clear, and context usually does make it clear, so even then you probably won't hear ella habla or él habla. But when it doesn't make it clear, or if there's a little bit of questioning whether whether like you might think it's, then we'll throw in the pronoun. Oh, ella habla español, right? Yeah, so we might throw it in, but a lot of times you still won't. Okay. Hablamos, again, otros is 2 syllables, ends with an os. Hablamos, 2-syllable ending, ends with an os. Nosotros, we hablamos. Ustedes hablan. By the way, hablamos here, the first part of hablamos is am. Hablamos. And the os matches the os of the nosotros. And the reason I'm pointing out the am is because what would be next in the dictionary? Well, an, right? So I don't know if that's going to help you, but it's just more stuff. I'm throwing more stuff out there that hopefully something like helps you remember. But sometimes you can just use brute memorization by like just pounding it into your head with repetition, which to me is good. Repetition is great. Like it has a bad rap these days, where like all these language learning techniques, all these language software and apps, like and like new methodologies, and like, oh, repetition is old school. Yeah, but it worked. It worked for people. It wasn't like, maybe it wasn't the most efficient way, but the most efficient way doesn't seem to be working for most people. It works for some people, but it doesn't seem to be working for most people, right? Like if you've tried, like if you're doing Duolingo, if you're doing Memorize, if you're doing like Mondly, or if you're doing Pimsleur or Asimil, or like Teach Yourself books, or like yeah, all of these books, or you're taking classes, tutoring classes, you're on Italki, you're on Preply, or whatever, like whatever, or you're buying textbooks and you're going through the textbooks. Is that working for you? That's my question to you. Is that working for you? Are you at the level, given the time investment, like given your time investment, are you at the stage where you think like, this is about right, like this makes sense, like I'm making good progress here, or I'm making steady progress? Or have you plateaued at basically the beginner stage, and you can say, hola, ¿cómo estás? Me llamo Maria, right? Like you can say a few like you can say a few like phrasebook things, which is good, but you really want to be able to like know that whole phrasebook. Like imagine you buy one of those what are those called? Planet something, like, you know, those phrasebooks. Like it could be Berlitz phrasebook, it could be any phrasebook. Like imagine if you memorize that whole phrasebook. And in this situation, when you're at the hotel, when people speak to you and they say something to you, you understand it, and then you can give the appropriate phrasebook response. Like if you were that level, you would be conversational. You would be conversational, and you would be ready to take off to the next level, which would be like, now you can hit the grammar. Now you can watch TV shows. Now you can start speaking to more people, and your Spanish would just like explode, like in a good way, right? Okay, so anyway, so this is the point of these basic grammar videos, and it's really the point of my other video series, Imminent Fluency. It's to get your vocabulary level up so that it's at the ready. It's at the ready. Just like if I say to you, hola, you already know. You're just going to say hola. If I say to you, ¿cómo estás? You already know. You're going to say muy bien, gracias. Right? But imagine if I said to you, like, ¿cuántos años tienes? And you can right away understand what I said, and you can right away spit out your age. Or what if I said, de dónde eres? And you're like, oh, wait, I know what he said. He said, where am I from? And then right away you can say, soy de los Estados Unidos, soy de Canadá, soy de Inglaterra. But just as quickly and just as easily and like fluently as you do the other thing. And what I'm talking about is you should be able to do this with about 1,500 words and about 500 expressions. And that would make you conversational, and that would make you ready. That would put you at like the pre-intermediate level, ready to start immersion, because the immersion will be more effective. It won't be frustrating, right? And anyway, so that's the goal. Okay, let's continue. I get off my tangents. I'm getting a little too excited about a pedagogical theory that like I haven't put to the test yet. This is it, by the way. You guys are the guinea pigs. Like I'm hoping that this first video, you guys go through it and you're like, oh, I got to the end and I was able to do the translations. Like, and you were like, I would never have been able to do that before this video. And then you're like, let me try number 2. Let's see if this idiot is correct. And then I give you a second video, which is coming, and then you do more translations, and you can see like, oh wow, I have all this under my belt, and you're remembering it. It's not like you're gonna forget it the next day, like most of us do most of the stuff we study, right? Like, so then you'll have reason to continue the video series, right? And then you'll be like, yeah, this is working. Keep it up. Here's some naked pics. We really appreciate you. Okay, so here we go. So, yo hablo, tú hablas, right? Yo hablo, tú hablas. Ella habla. It applies with él, but we're not using él because better for us to use the mnemonic ella. It's going to help us. It's not a mnemonic, but it's going to help us because it has the same ending. Ella habla. Ella habla. Okay, and this is for the AR verbs. It's not going to apply for the other verbs, but the other verbs are ridiculously easy. Trust me. Once you learn hablar all the way down, the other verbs are nothing. They're nothing, literally, almost nothing. You're going to see. Okay, so yo hablo. Again, yo hablo. Yo hablo. Tú hablas. Ella habla. Easy. Yo, what is it? Hablo. You can read it, so never mind. Yo hablo, tú hablas, ella habla. Okay, now we go to the plurals. Nosotros hablamos. That's always the hardest one for people to remember because it's just different. It's two syllables. Nosotros hablamos. I mean, in the ending. Nosotros hablamos. Right? Okay. Then we go, ustedes hablan, ellas or ellos hablan. And then the polite. It's very important to learn the polite. People don't really practice the polite, but like it's very useful. When you meet somebody for the first time, I don't care if they're younger than you, it's usually more traditional to say usted. Right. It's like, yeah, once you get on more familiar terms and like, okay, fine, go to tú. But usted is the very common, very practical language vocabulary. You should learn it and learn the conjugation. And notice again that the usted conjugates like él and ella. Él and ella is habla, and usted is habla. The meaning is you, like tú, but the conjugation is like ella. Okay, so usted habla. Okay, that's it. Yo hablo, tú hablas, ella habla, nosotros hablamos, ustedes hablan, ellos, ellos, I was going to say both at the same time. Ellos hablan, usted habla. All right. Again, this is not a shadowing. Don't get upset with me. Don't get frustrated here. I'm not offering shadowing opportunity so much here. This is grammar. But you've seen it enough and you're going to see more of it. Now, I told you that we're not going to spend a lot of time on the ER verbs and the IR verbs, and we're not. This is the only time. Later in other videos, you'll get more practice conjugating ER verbs and IR verbs. But let me show you how simple it is. If you know the hablar, I promise you, it'll take you exactly 2 seconds to learn, 2 seconds to learn the comer. All you got to do is look at the endings for hablar, o, as, a, amos, an, a. Wherever you see an A, switch it to an E, and you're done. So again, the root, the stem of comer, we take away the ER ending, and we're left with COM, right? COM. And we just add our endings. So, but we're not going to add AR endings, or we're not going to add A endings. We're going to add E endings wherever there's an A. So the como doesn't have an ending. I mean, the como doesn't have an A, so it's just going to be como. Yo como. Tú comes. Tú hablas. Tú comes. Ella habla. Ella come. Nosotros hablamos. Nosotros comemos. Ustedes hablan, ustedes comen. Ellos hablan, ellos comen, usted habla, usted come. Right? There's no grammar to do. You're just saying, okay, ER verbs require an E, where AR verbs require an A, and you're done. That's nothing. That's nothing. IR verbs are, going to IR is actually harder, but it's also painfully, like, embarrassingly easy. The only thing you have to do from going from this conjugation, this E, where all the E's appear, is you have to worry about the nosotros. And the nosotros, you see that you have the imos because it's an IR verb. That's the only time that I shows up in the conjugation for the present active of this verb. You keep the E's, just like for the E, for like comes, ES, you keep the E, vives, tú vives, right? Yo como, yo vivo. Tú comes, tú vives. Ella come, ella vive. The same endings. Now we make the switch. Nosotros comemos, hemos, nosotros vivimos, imos, right? So that's the only time. So you have the three. Amos, hablamos, comemos, hemos, vivimos, imos. There in the we, you see the differences. But other than that, the ER verbs and the IR verbs conjugate exactly the same. So, ustedes comen, ustedes viven. Ellos comen, ellos viven. Usted come, usted vive. Okay. One more tip, one more pronunciation tip. I don't know if it's a tip. It's a remark. Excuse me. A lot of Spanish books tell you that the V and the small b, I don't know how to make it, or the B are pronounced the same in Spanish. This technically, I think, is not correct. I like for me, I grew up speaking Spanish. Like I was born in Peru, and I spoke only Spanish till basically I was 6 years old, and then I transitioned to English, and then like it's just been like my dominant language is English. But anyway, I hear a difference between the V and the B. I hear a difference, and I pronounce a difference. Like it's minor, but it's there. My father grew up in Peru till like he was like in his mid-30s. Also heard a difference between the B and the V. My mother grew up in Peru until her like early 30s, doesn't hear a difference. So a lot of Spanish speakers, native Spanish speakers, say there's no difference. They hear no difference. And presumably they're not making any different sounds when they're doing it because they hear no difference. But a lot of us have, I don't know what the number is. I don't know what the ratio is, half or 30%, whatever. But a great many of us, native speakers, also, we hear a difference and we pronounce them slightly differently. Okay. So I think you can't go wrong if you just pronounce the V like the B. But here's what I think is the difference. When you say the B, like for like letter B, we roll our lips inward and then we kind of like roll them back out. Be. A little bit, not like bebe, 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 bebe. And even the second be, the touching is kind of forceful. It's not super hard, but bebe, be. The V, like say we're saying the word cow, which is vaca with a V, V-A-C-A, vaca. I don't roll my lips to say vaca. I don't do that. Vaca. No, I touch my lips a little bit of tension, but not a lot, and I say vaca. It's almost like a va, but it's not as exaggerated as in English. Right? It's vaca, vaca, vaca. Okay, so I am doing something physically different because I hear a difference and I'm trying to make a different sound, and I am making a different sound. I can hear it, right? But again, okay, so that's it. So vivo, not bibo. But to me, that's clearly different, right? Okay. Anyway, so vivo, vivo, vivo. Okay, vivo, vivo. All right, that's it. So easy, right? The ER verbs are easy once you know the AR verbs. And the IR verbs, there's nothing. You just have to change one. The nosotros, hemos ending for the ER changes the emos ending for the IR verbs, which makes sense. Okay, that's it. So now, for the rest of this video, for the rest of this lesson, we're only going to use hablar because we don't need to practice the practice for the other ones will come, but what we want to do grammatically, what we want to do conjugation wise, we're just going to focus on one because too much, there's no sense in overwhelming ourselves with more grammar than we need for the purposes that we want, and we can achieve our purpose by just using hablar today. So that's all we're going to do. Okay, so try to maybe say them one more time. Try to see if you can get them fixed in your head, because later I will give you hints, but I'm going to try to let you work through it and try to figure it out and try to remember. Okay, yo, mnemonic, yo, hablo, right? Tú hablas. Ella habla. Nosotros hablamos. Ustedes hablan. By the way, the H, we don't pronounce the H in Spanish. Not even lightly, not even like, don't try to sneak it in there like, don't do that. Just ignore it. Pretend it's not there. There's no sound associated with the H in Spanish. Hablamos, hablan, and ellos hablan. Y usted habla. Okay, you got it? All right, let's go. So I already gave you the mnemonics, which is on the next, starting the next page. Like, okay, you see this stuff. Okay, well, we don't need to do that. We already covered it. Now we're going to do the first, this sentence pattern of subject, transitive verb meaning it takes a direct object, right? It takes a direct object, and then the direct object. This is a common English sentence pattern. It's also a common Spanish pattern, and we use it basically to do the same thing English does. Okay. This pattern will change in Spanish if you start using direct object pronouns. In English, it doesn't change if you use direct object pronouns, but in Spanish it does. But we're not going to use the pronouns in this here. We're just going to use nouns. Okay, so here we go. For our purposes here, for the sake of trying to remember the conjugations and matching the personal pronouns to the correct conjugation, we're going to say all of the subject pronouns. We're going to say yo hablo inglés, where normally we wouldn't say yo hablo inglés. We would just say hablo inglés. But to like, yeah, to ingrain the conjugation for hablar, we're gonna say the pronouns and the verb. Okay. Yo hablo inglés. You obviously know what that means, right? If you don't know what that means, man, I don't know what to tell you. Like, unlike my video, unsubscribe, erase your browser history, and throw your laptop into the ocean. Like, you have no use for it as far as learning languages. Okay, yo hablo inglés. Yo hablo inglés. I speak English. Inglés is obviously English. Notice one thing. Notice that accent mark over the E. Notice the accent mark over the E. The accent mark over the E is telling you that this is the stressed syllable. In Spanish, in Spanish, the stress belongs on the second to last syllable, right? On the one before the last, on the penultimate. And if the word inglés didn't have that accent mark, well, then the first syllable would be in. And so you would say inglés. Yo hablo inglés, because you'd have to stress the second to last syllable, which would be in. But that's why the accent falls on the E, because it's telling you it's not inglés, it's inglés, right? Okay, so that's the purpose of the accents in Spanish, basically, is to tell you that the stress is not normal stress, it's here where the accent is. Okay, next. Tú hablas español, right? The ñ is like ña, 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 or some people say that like the N in onion, but I think it's a little bit harder. I think it's like the ña, 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 español, right? Okay. Notice that the stress is on the second to last syllable on the pa, español, not español, not español, but español. Okay, I know it's not easy to place the stress when you're learning a foreign language. Even when somebody points out to you that it belongs on the PA, it still might be hard for you to pronounce it correctly. That's why, like, that's the benefit of listening to the language over and over a lot. If you're a new language learner, I highly recommend you spend 70% of your time, 75% of your time just listening. Just listening, not understanding. You can watch, you can just listen, and you're not trying to understand words. You're just trying to understand the syllables, and you understand like the rhythm or of the language, right? And so, yeah, you'll hear people saying español, 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 and the more you hear it, the more you're able to discriminate the different syllables, and the more you're able, when it comes to speaking, you'll be able to pronounce it better than had you not done all that work. Right, but so a lot of input doesn't even have to be comprehensible. It just has to be the sounds initially. So that's why a lot of language learners just want to be inundated with just the target language. They don't even want the English explanation. They would hate kind of these videos. Like they like ASIMIL programs, like just give you the target language. You just throw you in the water of the target language, because they don't really care too much about the lessons that they're being taught. They just want to get bombarded with the language. Right. Okay. So anyway, so tú hablas español. You know what that means, right? You speak Spanish. Ella, remember, we're using ella as our choice here. Ella habla italiano. Ella habla italiano. Italiano. Ella habla italiano. She speaks. I don't need a drum roll for this, right? This is obvious, right? Italian, right? Okay. She speaks Italian. Next one. Nosotros hablamos francés. I want to make this bigger. That's what she said. There we go. Now that I can. Yeah, oh, I should have done this earlier. I thought the whole page didn't fit. Okay. Nosotros hablamos francés. Nosotros hablamos francés. We speak French. Okay. Ustedes hablan ruso. Ustedes hablan ruso. this one's maybe a little trickier, but not hard, not difficult. Like, you guys speak Russian, right? You guys speak Russian. Говорите по-русски. Okay, I'm trying to flex my minimal Russian. Ellos hablan japonés. The J in Spanish is a raspy ha, ha. It's not quite the Arabic ha. Those guys take it, they take it too far, right? You guys are extreme. It's a raspy. So if you meet a person's name is Javier, right? So this is japonés. Scratchy, japonés, japonés. Okay, and notice the accent mark over the E because that's where the stress goes. Japonés, right? Okay, okay. Usted habla alemán. Alemán is the only one you guys can get away with saying, I don't know what that really means, without looking like idiots, right? Like, yeah, this one would be like, I don't know what, I don't think there's any real clues here. I mean, you might have some clues if you know some other words and like, but it's German, right? It's German. Okay. Okay, that's it. How you doing? How are you guys doing? Yo hablo inglés, tú hablas español, ella habla italiano, nosotros hablamos francés, ustedes hablan ruso, ellos hablan japonés, usted habla alemán. Okay, next we're going to go to some vocabulary. And I mean for this vocabulary to stick. Like, you got to remember this vocabulary. That's the whole purpose of my little notes and my mnemonics and my etymology and my whatever. And you're going to need it to do the exercises. In the exercises, I'm going to give you hints slowly, like piecemeal. You'll get some hints, but I'm really meaning for you to be able to do the translating on your own. Okay, the first expression in red with the definition just to the right of it in parentheses. Todos los días. Todos los días. By the way, if you don't need the notes below it, if you don't need any mnemonic devices, you don't need to learn, just because you can just remember it, great. But the other thing is, for most other people that like would benefit from getting other bits of information about these expressions to maybe help them find a connection that helps them keep the memory, I mean, keeps the meaning in mind. Todos los días. Todos means all. Todos means all. This is a modifier, right? All what, right? Okay. So, and I say that because in Spanish, modifiers like adjectives or adverbs, or mostly adjectives, are going to be spelled depending on the noun that they are modifying. So if the noun is a feminine singular, then the todos would have to be in the feminine singular. If the noun was in the feminine plural, then the todos would have to be in the feminine plural. If the noun was in the masculine singular, then the todos would have to be in the masculine singular. But in this case, the noun is días, which is actually a masculine plural noun. It's one of the exceptions because most nouns that end in a, the singular for días is día, would be feminine, right? And day and día, like, what's the difference? D-A-Y. If you put the Y in front of the A, you have dia, as long as you don't pronounce it dia, right? But it's just like, even then, it would be kind of sound like day. Okay, so todos is all. It's masculine and it's plural because it modifies días. Los is the article, the definite article in Spanish. The is the definite article in English. We have one the. Doesn't matter if the noun is plural, singular, the. Doesn't matter if the noun is masculine, feminine. Not that English has these genders. It would still be the. But in Spanish, it matters which one. So you have 4 ways of saying the, just like you have 4 ways of saying todos. Okay, I know that sounds like a lot, but it's not so difficult. Spanish has a lot of grammar compared to English, but the grammar is very regular. Okay, so you'll trust me, you'll start to pick it up really fast. Okay, so los is the. Now, the important word is días here. Días comes from the Latin dies, and I'm assuming dies in Latin is masculine. It's just an assumption. But anyway, but in Spanish, it's masculine. So todos los días, which means literally all the days. All the days. And so that's kind of just every day. Like, even if you spoke like old-fashioned English, like, all the days I will love you, right? Every day I will love you. All the days of my life have been spent in bliss married to the love of my life. Every day of my life has been spent in bliss, right? Okay, so that's it, right? So if you can remember todos los días, all the days, it basically means every day. Next, nunca. Nunca comes from the Latin nunquam. Nunquam is never. So nunca and never are similar, not as similar as nunca and nunquam. And again, if you don't need to use the Latin nunquam to remember that nunca means never, then so be it. Like then you don't need it. Don't use it. Like so if you just nunca means never, I got it. Like okay, good. That's it. That's it. Siempre. Siempre means always. There's no real connection. Like nunca and never kind of sound the same, kind of look alike. Siempre and always don't look anything alike. But if you know the Marine Corps motto, Semper Fidelis, it means always faithful. Semper is always. Fidelis is faithful, right? Like that's why we name our dogs Fido, because dogs are faithful, right? Not like your cheating ass girlfriend. Sorry to all the cheating ass girlfriends. Much respect, much respect. Okay, so always says Marines also shorten Semper Fidelis to Semper Fi, right? Semper Fi, do or die, hoorah. I want to sleep with your sister. Okay, a veces. A veces here is sometimes. A veces kind of literally means at times or in times, right? So veces is plural for vez. Vez is instance or time. And a means to or at or in. So a veces means like literally at times. So at times I go to the beach with my sister. Sometimes I go to the beach with my sister. At times I like to read a book all day on Saturday. Sometimes I like to read a book all day on Saturday. So a veces is at times, which is basically just sometimes. Okay. Muy bien. Everybody knows muy bien, right? ¿Cómo estás? How are you? Muy bien. Gracias. Right. Muy comes from Latin multus, which means much or many. Bien comes from the Latin bene, which means good or well. And we see the cognates of bene in English: benefactor, beneficiary, beneficent, beneficial, right? So that's not difficult to remember, right? Okay, so muy bien means much good or much well sounds weird, but okay. So very well, muy bien. And I think since most of you probably already know this, it's not a big deal. No in Spanish is spelled the same way as no in English. It means the same thing as in English as in Spanish, but we just have a different pronunciation because we say in Spanish no, in English no. Like I know and no, there's no difference, right? But in Spanish it's no. Again, no. Tense your stomach, no, and cut off your breath. Once you articulate the sound, stop. Don't carry it. Don't like no, just no. Chop off the breath, right? And so my mnemonic device for you, which you don't need, but I kept it because I thought it was clever. No means no, guys. No, Spanish means no. English, clever. Come on. Give me my props. Okay, E comes from the Latin et, which later became shortened to just e, and then in some places e. So e and e meant and in a lot of places, and then that somehow became the e in Spanish, which we pronounce as e. So that's it. That y that makes the e sound is common in a lot of languages, in some I think Slavic languages or in Turkic languages, and sometimes it means you. It has a u. Okay. Anyway, so I'm just flexing my language skills here. E means and. It's always a little funny to me as a native English speaker to see one letter words, right? Like full on words, not just an article a. Like o in Spanish means or, and e in Spanish means and. Okay. So that's it. Next, we have a few more. Pero. I don't have a mnemonic for you for pero really. Well, maybe I do, but I don't have an etymology that helps you because the etymology is so far off from what pero is that there's not gonna provide a link. So there's no, I didn't include it. The only thing I want you to compare is pero. Again, there's the R. It's a tapping of the roof of your mouth, right, with your tongue. Da 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 da. Okay, and then the trilled R, the double R is trilled. Perro. perro. Perro is dog. So if for some reason it's ever appropriate to say, but the dog, pero el perro, pero el perro. That's it. So, okay, that's not going to helpful. That's not going to be helpful, but anyway. Compare pero, but to dog, perro. Not but, booty call, but as in conjunction, but. Okay. And then the booty call is also a conjunction. Anyway. Con. Con means with. Con means with. It's really easy. It comes from the Latin cum, not come, right? Guys, dude, seriously. Cum means with, right? Like if you've seen the graduate, if you've seen, the college honors, the graduation, when you graduate, people with certain GPAs get Latin honors. Like the cum laude is with honor or with praise. The magna cum laude is with great praise. And summa cum laude is with the highest praise, right? Or with highest praise, not the, you don't need to say that. Anyway, so, or highest honor, right? So, okay. So you've seen the cum, it means with here. And so con, which is basically cum, is with. Okay, and we see this, the cognates in English, right? Contemporary, living at the same time with another, cooperation, working with another, co-worker, somebody that you work with, right? So con is not a problem for the meaning of with. You shouldn't have any problems with this. I say that, but people do. It's foreign language. You can, like, I'm not the greatest foreign language learner. Anyway, conmigo. Conmigo is an old style construction. The con means with, it's the same con, and we attach it, there's not a typo, we attach it to the word that means me. But we're using an old Spanish version of me here. It's migo. It does mean me, but it's an old version, migo. So it's conmigo. And so if you said, I want to go to the store with me, you would say blah 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 conmigo, right? That's what you would say. And then that's it. And contigo is with you, and the same thing. The tigo is old fashioned of you, and so we just say, so I want to go to the store with you, blah blah blah, contigo, right? With you, I want to go to the store with you, contigo. Okay. By the way, this doesn't apply to like with him. It's not going to be one word. With us, it's not going to be one word, right? It's only with me and with you that becomes one word. Conmigo, contigo. Okay, I think that's the vocabulary. I hope like something like solidified this into your long-term memory somehow. 3 grammar tips before we begin our exercise. And the exercise is the whole point of this video. The whole point of this video is to hopefully have you learn how to conjugate the hablar in all of its like forms for the personal pronouns. Remember the vocabulary we just learned, and then I'm going to give you some grammar tips to help you, and then we're going to get on with it. The first grammar tip, and this is not to be exhaustive about adverbs, and prepositional phrases, but this is to help you place the adverb and the preposition within the sentence. So the tip is this. Whatever you're trying to say in Spanish, whatever the equivalent in English is, wherever in English you would put that adverb, maybe you put it at the beginning, maybe you put it after the subject, maybe you put it at the end of the sentence. That's the most common place for that adverb to be in English, in the English sentence, is going to work in the Spanish sentence. So if it goes at the end, then put the Spanish adverb at the end. That's it. That's the tip. Prepositional phrases, adverbs, that's the tip. Okay. Second tip. We talked about it earlier. In English, if I say I love you, or let's change that. If I say I speak English, I will say yo hablo inglés. I speak English. Yo hablo inglés. In English, to make that a negative statement, I would have to say I do not. I would have to add the word helping verb do, and I have to throw in the word not before the speak. I do not speak English. Yes, I can contract do and not to say don't, but it's still the same thing. You're adding do and not. In Spanish, all you have to do is add the word no. It's not even not, just no. So in Spanish, I speak English. Yo hablo español. Yo hablo español. I don't speak English. Yo no hablo español. Yo No hablo español. That's it. You're just saying no before hablo. Okay. I'm not saying the adverb no goes immediately before the verb no, because sometimes it doesn't. But in this case, when we just have subject, verb, direct object, between the subject and the verb, there's nothing. So the no goes there. The no will go right there. It's technically after the subject, but you can just think of it as before the verb in these kinds of sentences because it's going to be, there's no other place. There's just one place. Okay, so that's it. So to negate a sentence or to negate a statement, we just stick no after the subject. Okay. Tip number 3. In English, we say things like you and I, she and I, Pablo and I. We don't say I and you, I and she, I and Pablo, right? That's very bad. That's very bad English. In Spanish, that's not bad Spanish. In Spanish, I can say tú y yo, you and I, but I can also say yo y tú. I can switch the order, and it doesn't sound terrible. It's not the most common way, but it's not even really very bad. So if you mix up the order, it's no big faux pas here. Like you're fine. You're fine. Okay. So now let's go to the sentences. I'm going to give you time to think it through, to try to remember the vocabulary. Maybe you need the mnemonic and you need the I'm going to give you. Then I'm going to start giving you hints, and then we'll give the solutions, or we'll give the answers or translations. Okay, the first 3 I kind of color coded, but I'm going to leave it. I'm going to drink. Excuse me. So I'll read the first one so you can hear it. Maybe see if you can catch the meaning just by listening. But I know you're going to read it. It's hard not to read it now that it's already on the screen. Yo hablo inglés todos los días. Yo hablo inglés todos los días. I'm saying it a little bit slow, not super slow. Yo hablo inglés todos los días. Okay, I'll give you time. See if you can figure out the meaning. I hope my little gulping and didn't come through. That's always annoying to me. Okay, did you get it? Yo, personal pronoun. It's the first personal pronoun, right? It's the yo. It's the shortest one. Well, it's not the shortest one. Ed is also short, but it starts with a Y, ends with an O. It's always the first one. So yo means I, and then so hablo. Notice the ending. Hablo, yo hablo. They go together. So I what? And we know hablo means speak. This is the only verb we're using now. So if you don't remember that, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. English. What do I speak? Chinese? Japanese? No, English, right? Yo hablo inglés. Now, here's the trickier part. Todos los días. Do you remember todos los días? Do you remember todos meant all? Do you remember los días meant the days? So the meaning is, you figure it out? Okay, I speak English every day. I speak English every day. Yo hablo inglés todos los días. Yo hablo inglés todos los días. Now, in English, we would say, I speak English every day, right? And I told you, if you can put the prepositional phrase or the adverb todos los días every day at the end in English, you can do it in Spanish. So I put it at the end because that's where it would commonly be. Okay, so this is like number 1 is the way you probably should be you should be translating into Spanish, because your English should have told you, well, I want to say I speak English every day. You could say every day I speak English. That's unusual. Like it's a perfectly good grammar, but we don't normally speak that way. And you could say even I every day speak English. That's also very weird, but not wrong, but weird. And in Spanish, it's not so weird. So number 2, in Spanish is not so weird. Yo todos los días hablo inglés. Perfectly good Spanish, not weird. But number 2, really, you don't. I only put 2 just to make this point. The point is that when you're translating when you're making sentences in Spanish, if you're thinking of the English, you're like, oh, I would say I speak English every day. And so the expression every day comes at the end. So I'm going to put it into Spanish that way. And so you should be saying, yo hablo inglés todos los días. Okay. Number 2, you know the meaning is the same meaning. Number 3, notice I took out the subject pronoun. Nunca hablas japonés conmigo. Nunca hablas japonés conmigo. Do you remember nunca? Do you remember nunca? Do you remember the Latin? It's cognate, or the etymology. Hablas. This is the tricky part now. You have to know that the AS ending corresponds to what subject pronoun. The AS hablas and hablas corresponds to what subject pronoun. And then japonés, you better know what japonés is. Like, I don't know what to tell you if you can't figure these words out. And conmigo, we covered that. Those one of the was second to last word we covered. Conmigo. You know what con means, right? Okay, so here we go. Did you get it? You never speak Japanese with me. You never speak Japanese with me. Okay. Watashi wa Carlos desu. Okay. Onamae wa Carlos desu. No, that's wrong. My name. Namae no. My name. Wa. No, onamae no. Namae wa. No, what the hell am I doing? Forget it. I'm butchering Japanese. Shame on me. Okay, anyway, so here we go. Nunca hablas japonés conmigo. You never speak Japanese with me. Number 4, ella. By the way, if you don't remember what ella means, just read it as an English word, like a name, like Ella. Ella is obviously singular, and Ella is obviously feminine, and Ella is obviously third person, because names are third person. Just like however you would conjugate él habla, ella habla, Ella, the girl, habla. Michael, habla. My dad, habla. Right? Okay, not in English, Spanish, but you get what I mean. Right? People's names are third person. That's why when you talk about yourself in the third person, you're using your own name. Like if I said Carlos is hungry, Carlos needs a drink, Carlos is getting tired. Like, dude, why are you speaking in the third person? That's just weird. Like, that's weird. Right? Okay, but that's what it is. Okay, so hey, ella siempre habla ruso contigo. Whew. Okay. Ella, you should know. She. Siempre. Marine Corps motto, Semper Fidelis, means always faithful. Hoorah. Always. Habla. The only verb we're doing. Speaks. She speaks. She always speaks. What does she always speak? Ruso. With whom? Contigo. She always speaks Russian with you. She always speaks Russian with you. Whew, I wish she spoke Russian with me. Отлично, отлично. Okay, хорошо. Спасибо. Okay, here we go. A veces hablamos español con Pablo. A veces hablamos español con Pablo. Do you remember a veces? It's a little bit trickier to remember. A veces. A veces. Veces is the plural of vez. Vez means instance or time. A means at, in, or yeah. So this a veces literally could be translated as at times. So it means, do you remember? Hablamos. No subject pronoun. No subject pronoun, as would be most commonly expressed in English, in Spanish with no subject pronoun. Hablamos. Amos. Do you remember what that's supposed to refer to? The hablamos. What's the subject pronoun? And then español. You better know what español is. And then con Pablo. Con, right? Con. Remember the okay. And then Pablo. So sometimes we speak Spanish with Pablo. PD Pablo. PD Pablo. I just think of that the Brazilian cowboy dancing, you know. I can't do it. Anyway, so a veces hablamos español con Pablo. We sometimes speak Spanish with Pablo. 6. Ustedes hablan ruso muy bien. Ustedes hablan ruso muy bien. Ustedes. Again, if this was Spain, you would not hear ustedes, you would hear vosotros. Remember what ustedes means? And then hablan, obviously, is speak, some form of speak that matches with ustedes. Ruso, what language is that? And muy bien. Like muy bien, I feel like almost everybody knows. Like all Americans knowing muy bien and all Americans knowing gracias, right? So you guys speak Russian very well. You guys speak Russian very well. And notice that in English, we would say you speak Russian very well. We can put the very well at the end, and that's where it is in Spanish. Right? That's good. That's good Spanish. Number 7. Okay, we have a negative verb. Ellos no hablan inglés. Ellos no hablan inglés. Okay. Easy, right? Like ellos is easy, right? By the way, Spanish, like English, makes nouns plural by adding an S. And in Spanish, we do the same thing with the pronoun. El is, this one's different. So él is singular, but ellos is plural. Ella is singular and ellas is plural, right? So, okay, so this is a plural. They don't speak English. They don't speak English. You got it, right? You guys are getting it? Like, I feel like you guys are like on this. Like, I know I'm talking to nobody right now, but like, I feel like the people that are going to be watching this are going to be getting this. Okay, there's always a few exceptions, but yeah, language is tough. 8. Ellas no hablan inglés muy bien. Notice the beginning is almost exactly the same as 7, except we went from ellos to ellas, and we just added muy bien, which we had in number 6. So like, if you put it all together, I think you guys like, I feel like you guys are just like rolling through this. This is so easy. Like Spanish is so easy now. Yeah. I'm kind of like humble bragging, but I think it's like you guys should be taking to this like, and you're doing the translation. If not, let me know. Ellas no hablan inglés muy bien. They do not speak English very well. Their English is garbage. Ellas no hablan inglés muy bien. Okay, number 9. Usted, important in Spanish. Usted habla japonés y ella habla chino. Whoa, our grammar's picking up. I threw in a new word, but I'm not going to define it for you, because if I have to define it for you, I don't know what to tell you. You are not going to learn Spanish. That's not true, but like, I have little confidence in your cognitive abilities. Usted habla japonés y ella habla chino. Usted is the polite you, conjugates like ella, that's why it's habla. Japonés is Japanese, obviously. Did you remember what E is? Even if you don't remember what E is, you might figure out the construction is going to require this word, which is and. Ella, again, Ella, feminine, she, so ella is she. Habla, ella, habla, endings the same, speaks. Chino. Chino is Chinese. Okay. So you speak Japanese and she speaks Chinese. So you are mortal enemies. 10. Yo hablo inglés, pero ella habla español. Yo hablo inglés, pero ella habla español. Right? This is a lot of repetition, right? I'm telling you, repetition is like a drug. Like when it comes to language learning, it's like steroids. Like, I hate to use a metaphor. I mean, I hate to use a cliche, but yeah, like repetition is the key to language learning, in my humble opinion, in my non-expert opinion. It's just my pedagogical idea, theory, that heavy repetition with variety is going to help you remember, put things into your long-term memory better than other methods for most people. I'm not saying there are not better methods, there are not more efficient methods. There are, but I think those only work for some people, so a smaller group of people. I think for most of us, repetition is the way to go. Okay, so yo hablo inglés, pero ella habla español. I speak English, but she speaks Spanish. Welcome to California. Okay, next. Yo y ella hablamos francés. Yo y ella hablamos francés. It's not franqués. In Spanish, the E and the I, these letters, so CE and CI, the E and the I make the C soft. So it's not franqués, it's francés. The word 5 in Spanish is cinco. The first syllable is sin, C-I-N. And the second syllable is co, C-O. So the first C is soft, cinco. The second syllable is hard, co, right? Okay. This also applies to the letter G. For the letter G, the letters E and I make the letter G soft, which gives it a H pronunciation, just like the J. It gives it a J pronunciation. Ja, gente in Spanish, Gent is gente, almost as if it were spelled with a J, right? And then the word giant in Spanish is gigante. The first syllable is gi, he, because it makes the I makes the G soft. The second syllable is ga, because the A doesn't make the G soft, it keeps it hard. That's what she said. Gigante, gigante. So, okay, that's just pronunciation tip, a reading tip. Yo y ella hablamos francés. She and I speak French. Don't translate this as I and she, because we don't say that in English, so you don't translate it that way. You have translation liberties to make the translation sound like good English. And so 12 is the exact same thing. I just reversed the noun phrase ella y yo, because in Spanish I can do both. In Spanish I can say yo y ella hablamos en francés, and I can say ella y yo hablamos francés. I can do both. In English I cannot do both. So in English the translation will always be she and I speak French. Okay. 13. No hablo ruso. No hablo ruso. I don't speak Russian. Niet. Okay, sorry. That just means no, because I can't say no hablo ruso in Russian. Я не маю говорю по-русски. Is that right? That sounds kind of okay, but something tells me it's not right. Anyway. No hablo ruso. I do not speak Russian. I wish I spoke Russian, but I don't. Okay, 14. ¿Hablas italiano? In questions, you almost will never see the subject pronoun. ¿Hablas italiano? Hablas. We know it means speak, but conjugated for what subject pronoun? Obviously, because the A ascending, you should remember, hopefully by now, it's tu. Do you speak Italian? ¿Hablas italiano? Okay, last one. I'm not gonna say anything. I'll read it, but I'm not gonna say anything for a long time because it's long and I want to give you, that's what she said. I want to give you time. A veces hablas español conmigo, pero María nunca habla español conmigo. Y Roberto no habla español. A veces hablas español conmigo, pero María nunca habla español conmigo. Y Roberto no habla español. Okay, take some time, think it through, work your way through this somewhat long sentence. I'm gonna drink. I've been drinking this stuff too much. Ice soda's so good and so bad for me. This is diet soda. Not that that makes it much better. Maybe it's worse, but I don't know. But I can drink it even though I'm diabetic. Not that it's good for me, but that I can it doesn't ruin the taste for me. Because if I have regular soda, I can't. It's not even good. It just attacks me. Okay. A veces, sometimes. Hablas, you speak. Español, Spanish, conmigo, with me. Sometimes I can't speak English now. Sometimes you speak Spanish with me. Pero María nunca habla español conmigo. But Maria never speaks Spanish with me. She's a little stuck up. María nunca habla español conmigo. Y Roberto no habla español. And Robert, or Roberto, maybe he's Hispanic, doesn't speak Spanish. Shame, Roberto. How you name Roberto and you don't speak Spanish? You self-hating caramel, whatever. Anyway. Y Roberto no habla español, and Robert doesn't speak Spanish. Okay, that's it. We did 15 sentences. And look at the last one. The last one's kind of long here. And if you were able to translate this is day one. Yeah, I'm sure you have some Spanish behind you. But to do 15, right? To know all the vocabulary, a veces, conmigo, pero, nunca. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, this was lesson 1. I'm not going to blabber too long, but I am going to blabber on for a little bit here. This is lesson 1. I have not made lesson 2 yet. I wrote out a draft, but I feel like I'm going to change the draft a little bit and alter it a little bit because I want to start. I want you to practice the next lesson using the translation of comer, the ER. Get used to the ER, even though it's very simple to do, but then we'll do the IR. And as we do, we'll learn more vocabulary. But again, nothing more than like 10 to 15 words. And then we'll start using them over and over again. And you'll start translating over and over again. After the first 3 lessons where we translate using so in this one we use hablar a lot. The next one we'll use comer a lot. And then the third one we'll use vivir a lot. And the translations will go from Spanish to English. It's the easier direction. It's harder to go from English to Spanish, as you probably know. Lesson 4, we are going to go from English to Spanish. I'm not gonna hold your hand and have you take baby steps when you guys are fully capable of taking bigger steps. Like we tend to fall into this pattern where like we want to avoid frustration. That's a given. That's human nature. But like this idea of comprehensible input. Comprehensible input means you understand a lot, but there's some parts that you don't. And that's the part that you're going to learn. That's the part you're going to struggle through. That's the part you're going to experience some frustration, but not so much that makes you give up, not so much that makes you like that it defeats you, right? But you have to have some part where you're like pushing your limits, right? Okay. I feel like with translations, people go way too slowly. Like they do like baby book translations. Like, no, like look, day 1, we're at sentence 15. And we can do more grammar as long as you get full explanations and you do a lot of repetition. Okay, so that's it. Now again, this series is not meant to be for you to shadow me and practice your pronunciation. This is the grammar series, right? Now, do I need to remind you what the title of this stupid video is? Basic Spanish grammar with an AR, not ER, you illiterates. It bugs me to see GRAMMER in the comment section. It's grammar with an AR. Sorry, I'm one of those like, what are they called? Grammar police, grammar Nazis. Grammar Nazi, not a nice expression, but anyway, no harm, no foul. What? Anyway, so, okay, so now, I'm also in the process of making, like I mentioned before, and this is the last thing I'll say, a series called Imminent Fluency. The imminent fluency means the step before you get to fluency. But to reach that stage, like it would be like a big like milestone. Most of us are not there like in any language we've tried to learn. You've bought books, you've enrolled in classes, you've spent maybe 2-3 months, maybe a year, 2 years. Maybe you've taken college or high school like Spanish, and you still are not conversational. You cannot be put into a social environment where people are making small talk with you because you can't understand what they're saying. And even if you could understand it, you wouldn't have the wherewithal to answer them, right? 1, because your pronunciation is garbage, and 2, because you don't know what words to use, right? Okay, so the imminent fluency is meant to take you to where you can have these small talk conversations, but it's going to require you to have like a vocabulary of 1,500 words, and we're going to get there, and we're going to get there through phrases or expressions or sentences that are common, like how are you, what's your name, my name is blah blah, I am this many years old, it's hot today, oh you look nice, can I have your phone number, do you want to get together, oh my birthday is today, like just I feel fine, thank you, like expressions, but we'll expand, we're like 500, eventually 500, and then that's where the series ends. The series is broken up into the first 250, which is roughly the first 800 words, and then the second 250, which is going to be the next like 700 words, and then the series is going to be over. But that's going to be like 45 videos because I'm going to have to chop them up into like each video is going to cover like 10 to 15 words because we're going to learn them the same way we learned these words, with these little tidbits and etymology and then repetition. Okay. But that's just listening input. That's shadowing practice, and then hopefully you can remember. Okay, anyway, so I haven't made that series yet, but I think technically it would be better to watch that series before you get to this series, but you can definitely just watch this series first and get a lot out of it. Okay, that's it. Leave your comments If you have suggestions, fine. If you have criticisms, fine. Don't comment and say you're not a native Spanish speaker. I'm not a native Spanish speaker. I grew up in Peru. I spoke Spanish natively till I was 6. Then I switched over to English, and like my Spanish has slowly deteriorated. So no, but my pronunciation is still pretty good for most things that I say. And if you ever reach my level, like, come on, let's be real. If you could speak Spanish as well as I speak Spanish, you would be over the moon, right? You would be ecstatic. You would literally pop some E, go to a rave, get yourself raped, and you would be delighted, right? So let's not pretend like that some people can't benefit us, even though they're not like full on PhD expert native Spanish speakers. No, I'm not saying this as a defense for myself. I don't give a shit if you watch my videos or not. I don't give a crap if you learn Spanish or not. Like I give a crap that this method is working because I have like an interest in like providing a good method. And if it doesn't work and you guys tell me it doesn't work, then I'm gonna take that like, yeah, that's important to me. But like that you don't try my method or not doesn't matter to me, right? So but if you're gonna try it, like I want feedback from people who like give the method a shot, right? Like I don't want feedback and say, oh, this is not working, where you didn't even really like shadow, where you didn't even really try the exercises. And like, yeah, of course it's not even working. I can't just make you like fluent in Spanish. You got to put in the work, right? Anyway, how did I get on this tangent? Anyway, okay, so that's it, guys. Uh, salute, semper fi. And I have to click and now I'll log off. Bye.